The ideas, procedures, and suggestions contained within this podcast are not intended as a substitute for consulting with a medical professional. All matters regarding your health and fitness require medical consultation and supervision. Welcome to the Warrior Wellness Podcast, a podcast for military members, veterans, and first responders focusing on fitness, health, nutrition, and biohacking. Our mission with this podcast is to introduce America's heroes to lifestyle habits and hacks that will help them live healthier, happier lives, and in turn, be fit enough to continue their support of their communities and country.
All right, Dr. Pat Ballone, thank you so much for joining us on the Warrior Wellness Podcast. And I just wanted to mention that I stumbled upon Dr. Pat's book, Why Are You Sick, Fat, and Tired? And I absolutely had to look her up. And as soon as I looked at her, yes, thank you for holding that up. As soon as I checked out her website, I had to have her on the podcast because I feel like we are so much in alignment about how we feel about wellness and health and fitness. And I just had to have you on the site. So just right off the bat, doing some research on you, I had to quote you like right off the bat because I just loved this so much. And you say on your website, I refuse to remain silent and watch people get sick, suffer, and die way before their time and make poor choices because no one ever told them anything different. So I'm just going to ask you where that came from because I can feel the emotion behind that statement. I mean, there's a lot of emotion there and passion. So where does that come from? And have you had experiences in the past where you've seen this, or maybe it happened to you personally?
Okay, to answer that question about that quote, and I just really realized by looking at people's eyes, looking at people's faces, and then studying Chinese medicine, that in walking around Boston, what I got was that there were a lot of sick people who didn't know it. There was that sickness in the title, Why Are You Sick, Fat, and Tired, came about because I was looking at, well, people know if they're fat. Basically, you can do a body composition. You can tell how your clothes are fitting you and stuff. If you're tired. A lot of people are exhausted. You're depleted in the middle part of the day, let alone the end of the day. And then you have their face, like you can see the skin in their face and their hands. You can see, when I was someplace eating, I could just look at people's poor choices, and I just made the sign of the cross, thinking like, oh my God, don't ask me, about what to eat for food. You're not going to like it. And, so it was a really interesting adventure to see all that. So back to the title. So, if you're tired, if you're fat, basically, but you don't know if you're sick. And so in Chinese medicine, what I learned when I became an acupuncturist, that you can look at people's faces, you can look at how healthy they are. You can see the light on, and it's just like, it's always nice to be around somebody who has that sparkle in their eye. They don't even have to, they emit such energy around them, so it was always, like when I was in Boston during that time span where, I decided that I was going to come out, because I basically, for all intents and purposes, was retired, and I just went, I can't sit here and watch people do this to themselves. I've got to do something. And it was really motivating because at that time, it's just like, I probably was the healthiest I ever been, exercise wise, mental, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. If I thought I could do something, and it was my whole chiropractic career from when I graduated from chiropractic school in 1984, to even at the time, it's just like, doesn't everybody think that they can do and achieve anything?
Yeah. And so what you're describing is, and I think this is the conundrum that we're in as a society, even a global society at this point, is if it's normal for you to feel, just lethargic and brain foggy and tired, and you kind of have all these kind of symptoms and aches and pains. You don't really have any explanation for them, and everybody else around you is that way too. It's normal actually in our society to be a sickly person. If you're not sickly, if you're not overweight, if you're making healthy choices, if you have no medical conditions, you're in the minority. you're a weirdo, right?
Well, yeah, you are. I mean, you have, that's really quite true. I mean, like, you have to, people don't ask that question, why, like, why do I have that? Like, if I was talking to somebody earlier today and, we were talking about this very same thing. It's just like people, and if you don't have your health, you can't do work, you can't excel, you can't be the CEO, you have to have a certain level of, health in order to achieve the things that you want to do on a daily basis. And if you don't, then you struggle. And if you struggle, it's like, if you were my girlfriend and I would say, hey, girlfriend, like I have, lately I've been having this like bloating, blah, blah, blah. And you'd say, how old are you? And I would give an age and you're like, oh, I had that then. Don't worry about it. It goes away. But then you realize, because you don't check in with it anymore, you realize a year later that you're not in a better place than you were a year before that.
Right.
So yeah, and so you start taking on those things as, new normals. How do you think people, when you see an older person walk by far, in more what's inflection, then what happens is that those people walking around inflection, they didn't get there like that. It was something that was very gradual. They had an accident, they fell down, they never got that component of that inflammation in the joints, fixed. So they just accepted that as a new normal. It's just like when you're looking at somebody who has frozen shoulder, and they can't pick their arm up, it's just like, and I've had a frozen shoulder on one side, the other side, and back on the other side, from a ski accident that I was in at one point in time. But nevertheless, it's just like when you can't move your arm, you don't realize what that does and how that relates, in a transitional way and mobility purposes for the rest of your body.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I've told somebody, I go, if you don't get that shoulder fixed, you're going to have it on the other side too. And they're like, you're a bearer of blessings, Dr. Pat. I said, it's true. I can see that. You can see that rounded shoulderness, but people don't pay attention to their posture.
Well, we've been taught to ignore our bodies, right? From a young age, we've been taught to kind of ignore. And then, and this kind of transitions into the next question I want to ask you is that's kind of the difference between the traditional kind of, I call sick care system. It's, our traditional healthcare system, although it's a sick care system, versus what you do, which is more holistic and looks more at the root of the causes, taking more preventative actions, intervening earlier rather than waiting for, it's like we have check engine lights coming on all over the place and we're told to ignore or mask with medications, right? So you just go to a doctor, you complain about something, they give you a pill, right? And it masks the symptoms. There's almost no investigation as to where that came from. How long has this been going on? Did it start small and gradually grow? And where it could be, going as far as the implications for maybe affecting other systems. So can you talk about the contrast where you start with your patients and how you kind of teach them to listen and pay more attention to warning signs, as you call them?
Sure. To address that first thing that you talked about, though, you have to take somebody and their mindset, because if you don't change their mindset, they set themselves up for failure, and they'll do what makes them feel good. So when they hit the ceiling and they can't bust through the ceiling, then what they'll do is they'll repeat a behavior that they did before, even though that's kind of almost the definition of insanity, because you're not getting any place and you can't figure out, like, why am I not making more money? Why don't I have better relations? Why don't I have better health? Why don't I have, and it's because instead you're looking outside, just like traditional medicine does, and you're not looking inside, because healing comes from inside out. It's an inside out job. So, and also in that mindset is taking, it's similar to taking somebody from the platform that, the world is flat to the world is round. And when they have that ha-ha moment and they're going like, wow, by being more hydrated, I'm getting rid of toxins. I can help control my weight. I can help, improve my breath. I can help, be, have the right kind of hydration with the right kinds of foods, and like voila, you have better health. So when you're looking at, at like what the cause of a problem is or what the root of a problem is, you've got to ask yourself, like, what is it? Why is it? And what's in my environment that I'm doing that's either contributing or taking away from my life? Because everything that you put in your mouth either enhances your health or it detracts from it. So that would mean that all food that you eat affects you hormonally. So if you're not sleeping well, most of the hormones are handled in your body in your sleep, because that's when you repair, you revitalize, and you restore functions in your body. Your brain detoxes when you sleep. So if you're not sleeping and you don't have the right amount of sleep, and you're not getting into the levels in the of sleep, like 1, 2, 3, 4, in the deep sleep where all that magic happens, then you're always going to do, there's a where you start having some depletion. So when you look at this most simplest thing that people can do to improve their health is by controlling and taking back control of what goes in their mouth, and how can I do this on a regular basis so I don't feel like I'm being punished? Because a lot of people do, when they go to do a diet, or if they do a detox, which, detoxes should be, monitored a little bit more than what they are, because a lot of times people do detoxes and they're purging. You never want to purge your liver, never, and so you have people who like choose to do these DIY things that could be doing more harm than good. So when looking at and talking to people about, hey, where to start, tell me what you like to eat first. And anybody can give something up. If you know that when you eat avocados, it makes you bleed in your intestinal tract, why would you continue to eat avocados? And if you knew that when you eat a certain food, it makes you feel bloated, it makes you tired, there's something with whatever you ate that is affecting how you're thinking. And if you keep on damaging your gut, then, it's no quelle surprise that you have problems with, gluten, you have problems with lectins, you have problems with, sugars or salts or spicy food that you never had a problem with before in your life. In the easiest organ system out of the 11 that kind of all work like a Swiss watch to fix is the gut. And so it's like, and you got to fix the gut first before you do a detox, because you don't want those toxins dumped if you have leaky gut and it keeps on recycling to go to the liver, because when the liver gets overwhelmed, it puts it in your weakest link. And when that weakest link is overwhelmed, it goes to your next one. So people wonder why, and then they will take the medications that you spoke about. I think in 1999, 2000, I read a stat at that time that the average person who was 50 years old was taking 5 meds.
Right.
I found that astounding. As first off, someone's taking my meds, which I never want to take anyway. And and it's just like, because when you do that, then, they're treating symptoms. They're not, and they're like, doctors, like, what's the matter with you? And then here's a script, or here's, at one point in time, they were so worried about antibiotics. They have the super antibiotic, the super guys out there, germs that were going to get you, which they postured us for today, right? From Time Magazine. Time Magazine also said in 2004 that they had a miraculous, discovery of how chronic illness and disease was all related to inflammation. That's like, the problem is, that was 2004, we're 2021, we still have the same problem. We have more of a problem, as we saw in how people, when they contracted and they had COVID, how their bodies responded. You had, people whose immune systems just slammed down shut and they died because they were sick and they didn't know it. So, they never took the time to foster getting better.
I want to bring up, I just heard the other day, and I don't know if it was from you or somewhere else, but that was the thing that astounded me was, and this is true, is, that a majority of the people who have died of, of COVID, the same thing keeps coming up is most of these people are saying, or their loved ones are saying, well, they were healthy, but then when you look into it, so they said they were healthy, but the problem is our American definition of healthy is actually
The
very
problem.
ill. They are
Mm-hmm.
on 5 medications on average, and we
Right.
call that healthy just because it's normal. That's not the
Mm-hmm.
same thing. And I think that that's what kind of drew me to you, is this is what you talk about a lot in your book, and what you do in general is you're trying to help people distinct and kind of separate the fact and kind of retrain their brains, like you said, changing your mindset is just because it's your normal, or it's normal for almost everybody else, it you don't have to accept that. You being on 5 different
Mm-hmm.
medications, you should throw up your hands and go, no, no,
Mm-hmm.
I don't accept that. I want to be on 0 medications. I want to be really healthy. I want my definition of health to be, of a healthy weight, of a healthy body composition, to have endless energy, to not, have stomach and problems and bloating and constipation and diarrhea constantly, depending on what I'm eating.
That's not normal.
It's not, but
Yeah.
it's normal for most people, so most people have
Mm-hmm.
Pepto-Bismol and all these Tums and antacids, and this is a normal part of their life, and acid reflux. And how do you help your patients separate that? Is like, this isn't normal, this isn't health. You say you're healthy, but actually there's so much better health out there. How do you help them make that transition mentally?
Well, you first have to go back to what they learned. And I ask people a couple questions. I first ask them if they're willing to do what it takes to be healthy. And because obviously they wouldn't be talking to me at some point in time, or if they like and I use that even when I'm doing like, working with, executives, and entrepreneurs. But whatever, I always thought like whatever I did as a sports physician, I said, well, a sprained ankle is a sprained ankle. And so when I look and talk to people, I ask them, are you willing to do what it takes to be healthy? Are you committed to it? And I said, because commitment isn't just like one day it doesn't work, then you kind of like throw it aside. Commitment, you see it to the end, and you also look at, you have to be willing to look at outside the box. So on my LinkedIn profile, I changed it yesterday, the banner, and because I found a picture of me teaching a group of people. Actually, they were medical doctors who, I did this 9-dot theory. Are you familiar with 9-dot puzzle? So you draw these 9 dots out, 3, 3, 3, and you connect all the dots with one line in 4 directions. So you never pick the pencil up. So you pick one dot to start with, and you draw 4 lines, and they should connect all the dots. They can't be curved lines. They have to be straight lines. So I always let people do that. And I go, because that's your box of your knowledge. And just because you have that box of knowledge does not mean that there's not another solution. And a lot of people don't ask the question. When they go to doctors, they're very scared of them. They're intimidated by them very easily. So they forget the questions that they really want to ask. And plus they don't know the questions, because if you ask a right question, you get the wrong question, you're going to get blah, 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 or wah, wah, wah. So asking those questions and knowing what to do is fine. So back to the 9 dots, when people look at that, I tell them that represents their life. That's what you know to be true. In order for you and for your solution, you might have to go outside your 9 dots. So if you looked at the 9 dots has a little wall to it, when you draw that line, a couple of those lines go outside the 9 dots. It busts through the wall. It makes the sunlight come in. And you're going like, oh, you mean I can go to a chiropractor, and I might not have headaches anymore? Wow, I never knew that. Or I didn't know that 9 out of 10 people when they're born have some type of cervical injury because of the birthing process. I mean, just those kind of structural things. And I didn't know that there's something like 22 teaspoons of sugar in a can of Coca-Cola. Diet Coca-Cola has aspartame, and it's linked to so many chronic degenerative diseases. I know two people that were specifically, related aspartame to the NutraSweet, which they now call it by a different name. I don't know what it is right now off the top of my head. They relate that to their MS. So when you have something that's so deep, that's going to the blood level, in Chinese medicine, blood's pretty deep. And in Western medicine, blood's really deep, but they don't look at that as being a target and where the root problem's at, and then why did you get it? People just don't ask those things, and they don't think outside, especially in this day and time, because they've been so programmed by media to accept what they see as face value,
Right.
or put people, even on, on LinkedIn, being, at what they see and what they read, instead of doing their own research and really researching it out in the right place. But people don't know where to go for that research either.
Right. And their medical doctors aren't telling them where to look either. The medical doctors are just telling them what, what they learned in medical school, or what the drug companies are telling them at the luncheons. So that's all they're telling their patients.
Well, the thing is that, when a medical doctor says to somebody, I equate Western medicine and alternative medicine in a very simplistic analogy that I learned from a chiropractic friend of mine. And he's, and what he teaches is the fireman carpenter principle. So when your house is on fire, that you call the fire department comes out, they bust through the windows, they bust through the doors with their axes and their hoses. So what they do is they get in your house and they hose everything down. That's what medicine does. It hoses everything down. It hoses the symptoms down, it dilutes it, and it puts the fire out, and they destroy your whole house. And they're going, didn't we do a good job? And you're going, wow, thanks a lot. I lost all my things, all my personal heirlooms and things that were so important to me, but I have a house I now have to rebuild.
Right.
So then they call the carpenter, and the carpenter is the alternative medicine doctors. They're the ones that think outside the box and saying like, hey, what a mess. We have to go back to basics. I'm a go back to basics, common sense kind of doctor. I look at, okay, so this is what we got going on. Here's our diagnosis. What can we do? If food's medicine, what's the first thing we can do? In lifestyle medicine, that is the first thing that you do, is you look at diet, nutrition. Diet's very different than nutrition. But then you go like, okay, so I have that. So what are the components, are important to be healthy? Exercise, you got to move. If you don't move, my second patient said, who was 92, she must have been doing something right for all those years. You're going to die. That's what she said. So then you got to take targeted supplementation, because those 11 organ systems work intricately. And when they don't, one affects the other one and the other one, and it just starts trickling down. So in my survey, in my book, you can have, a very low immune score and very higher scores, which are your higher priority scores for your other organ systems. And in those organ systems, you're going like, well, my immune system's really good. Well, it is for now. But if you keep on taxing it, because you don't know how long something takes you to get sick, it eventually is not going to participate. It's going to have to quit. You don't give it another choice. It's like never taking your car to get an alignment and using the same tires until the end of for 10 years and thinking that that's going to work. It doesn't work that way. And your body doesn't work that way either.
Exactly.
And that's, so it's so convoluted, to like when, talking to somebody about getting to the root and making that mindset shift. So on the emotional component of looking at people's health, we, in this day and time, we have a huge problem, with mental health in this country, and I can't speak from other point of view, but, I've witnessed it, I'm thinking like, oh my God, we don't eat well, we don't think well, and we don't move well. And when you have paralyzed will of fear, because fear is a lot of times false experiences appearing real. And, and it's just like, if it's real, then you're like saber-toothed tiger, it's in front of you, you run, or you figure out how to like become part of the environment. Right. So you don't get attacked. But people have, there's a huge disconnect, from people's mindset and being able to go from point A to point Z in their health. And then when they don't know what to do, they give up. as
Exactly.
opposed to getting the mentor asking questions. So, when you ask your doctor questions and they can't answer them, or they slough you off, or they push you aside with it, get a different doctor. Go for
Exactly.
a second opinion. You
Mhm.
don't have to take what somebody says as, face value. Go, do your research and prove it yourself.
Yeah, I
You
love
know,
that. And that's what I love about your what the services you provide at the Health Team Network is I loved that you provide an advocacy service. And because like what you said is you don't know what you don't know. And of course, there's a lot, you and I know a lot of things because we've been in this holistic, I mean, you've been in it, longer than I've probably been alive, but we've been in this holistic realm for a while, so we know a lot of things, but we've had to learn that over time. So to expect our clients and our patients to know that stuff, to learn it right up front, is just kind of impossible. So you do advocacy, which I love, because you can help your clients and your patients advocate for themselves, ask the right questions, direct their care, make it personal to them and their needs instead of the other way around. Usually
Mhm.
we go to a doctor and they dictate what we're going to do, and then they're out the door in 5 minutes. Then all of a sudden you're just like reeling, like, what just happened? I didn't even get to ask a
Well,
question.
right. You only have 15 minutes on either on a call, like a telemedicine call, or 15 minutes, and they're booked 15 minutes solid. So if you don't get to the point, and a lot of people don't know how to speak the language with their doctor, or speak their doctor's language, so that they get that they have an issue someplace. And doctors don't do the same thing with patients. So what I've always have done is, just like when a patient was told me that they were going to go to the doctors, I go, well, what kind of doctor are you going to? And it's like, I don't know what to ask him, but this is what's going on with me. I said, how come you never told me that before? I mean, because I'm thinking, let's take a look at like what we can do on our side, of the fence, to make our grass greener here. And um, so, but giving them the questions to ask. And I said, you just sit down and get in there and just say, here's the situation. If they're trained in reading a graph, the kind that's in my book, then perfect. They can help push you in the right direction. Because I work with people virtually. I don't work with people one-on-one. I do for special higher, like, VIP type things and stuff like that. Or as I'll come to someone's house and go through their whole kitchen. And, usually a couple, times I've done that before COVID, someone said, I don't have anything left. So it's like, you've got to read labels. You've got to know what you're putting. If you can't pronounce a food, an ingredients on your can or whatever food, I go, you shouldn't eat it, And so but I like the quote that you did, like, you don't know what you know, and you can't see, and what you can't see can kill you. Right. So, and it's a truism, so that when you put those two together, people don't see that, the sick part. They don't see, and nor do they don't understand it. And it's difficult for them to understand. But then
Right.
they don't understand what Western medicine doctor is telling them, and not that Western medicine is bad, because you've got to, like, if I had, somebody had a stroke, you wouldn't bring them to me, you would take them to ER.
Right.
And they would need specific things,
Yes.
so, and at some point in time, after they hose them down, they're going to say they need to do surgery because they don't know what else to do on the end of that stick of being, like, that's what they do because that's what they've been trained to do. And so that's when, and sometimes by then there's so much other stuff happening that you've got layers of things to go through. So you don't get, I take on a client, I don't take on a client for a month. I never do that. If that's what they want, they can go someplace else. People who I work with for 3 months, 6 months, and a year, because there's so much information out there. You can't assimilate that in a month and try
Exactly.
to implement that into a system, that you can help reverse, suppress, or you can, get a more balanced, more balanced outcome, and be able to focus on your health. Because when you
Hmm.
do that, then you have sustained energy, you have productivity, you have, good relationships, you have, like, you can work, you can be better at communication. Because when people get tired, they talk like they're drunk. I mean, when someone's tired, the highest number one reason for car accidents is that people fall asleep at the wheel. And it's not texting, it's, so you have to take a look at, in piecing the puzzle together, you have to have all the pieces, and you've got to be able to be willing to do what it takes to be healthy.
Yeah.
And that might mean, so I can find a simpler way for somebody. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but it's very doable. And
yeah,
and
like you said, commitment to the time that it takes, and I say to all, now I'll say, using your book title from now on, it didn't take you overnight or a month to get sick, fat, and tired. So why are you expecting it all to just magically go away in a month? I do the same thing. I don't work with anybody less than 3 months. So, and it's a commitment to not only what you need to do to solve your problems, the many layers, that are going on, but also the commitment to time to know that this is a path of healing, not a sprint. You didn't get sick overnight, so you're not going to be able to heal overnight. So don't throw in the towel just because you don't instantaneously feel magically better and lose the 50 pounds in a week. It's just not going to happen because you didn't put on the 50 pounds in a week. So,
well, something to note on weight, on weight loss is that every fat cell in your body is an endocrine organ. And so when you try to purge fat from your body so quickly, it's the storehouse for toxins. Toxins get stored when the liver gets overwhelmed and your body can't get rid of it. It stores it in blood, brain, bone, and fat. And that's the first place that it goes, and then it goes from there to, bone, then it goes to brain, so you can see, and the brain's highly fatty tissue. It likes fatty tissue because it's easy for it to store. But when you go to lose weight, you're shedding toxins. And you want to do it in a way that is very healthy so that you don't end up getting sick from what you've been eating for 20 years.
Right. And storing all those toxins.
And
right.
that accumulation. Yeah. And all that accumulation.
Right.
And
what I love,
people get sick.
Exactly. And I've seen it. I've seen it happen in clients who lose weight too quickly. And usually they've done these extreme, diets. And then of course they put on all the weight plus some. So it's just getting them out of that hamster wheel they're stuck in.
Well, they say it takes 21 to 28 days to learn a new habit. And
I think it takes longer.
No, it does. It does. It's like 265 days or something like that to really, to learn a habit. So what they did, they said, they knew they could never sell that. That would never, ever sell on the internet. Nobody could sell you a weight loss program. Oh, by the way, it takes you 265 days to first learn this habit. So they break it down to 21, 28 days. And they say, if you can do it 21, 28 days, then you can do it 90 days. So now you're at 110.
There you go.
And then you just keep on, pairing it out. Like if you did it 90 days, you can do it for the next month, or you can do it for the next 90 days, and you keep on adding to it. But when you said that, it reminded me of something I talked about in a course about mindset recently, that, about that learning curve with like the 80-20 rule or something like that too.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I love about what you do, and, in functional medicine in general, and chiropractic, and Eastern medicine, just alternative medicine in general, is, it's divorcing the kind of lack of control. The traditional medical healthcare system takes a lot of control out of the patient's hands. And what you do is you provide a sense of control and a sense of hope, which is lacking in a traditional medical system. What I believe, it's my opinion.
Well, it is, I'll tell you, I had a biopsy done years ago. And, I think I wrote an article about the sick model of medicine. So, but when you used it before we went on air, it made me laugh. So I was in a room where they were deciding where to go take this biopsy, from. And, they had to do another MRI or an X-ray. I can't remember what it was. And I insisted on having a baseline study because it was breast. I was insistent on having a baseline study of ultrasound. And they told me it wasn't diagnostic. But in truth, ultrasound is diagnostic when you can't have a mammogram. And mammograms are so full of radiation that I said, well, we're either doing it or we're not doing the procedure. I mean, I just like drew the line, just said it. And I said, because what you're telling me is that you're technicians, you're not physicians who can repeat the same test over and over and over again and get the same results.
Ooh,
That's and
good.
So, the person who was in the room with me at that time turned around and left, and she got the head of radiology to come in. And I went, who are you? She said, I'm Dr. So-and-so, and I'm going to do your ultrasound. I went, great. And because cancer looks different in breast and ultrasound than it does in, another venue, like in an MRI kind of thing. So then we went and we did this, and they took this picture again because they wanted to make sure they knew the location. And they were standing behind me. I was already laying on the table, and they were standing behind me, and they were whispering. And I knew, I didn't know if they were all women or not all women or whatever. I said, ladies, if you're going to talk about me when I'm in the same room, you need to speak up, because if you don't, I'm off the table.
Yeah, good.
And I said, and they're going, well, every time you talk, you move. And I just said, you might get somebody else to believe that, but I don't believe that. There's no way my breasts are moving inches by me having a conversation, and talking. And I said, so I go, I don't think, and I go, that's not, I go, use that excuse with somebody else. So you either talk louder so I can understand what you're saying if you're going to talk about me, or I'm off the table. Make a choice.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? And they picked their voices up. So, and they were talking really about anger and, stuff like this that I understood. I never told them I was a physician. And so, and of any sort, for them. And so they did the procedure, and I left. But I just thought about how many other people, unfortunately, go in, and you made to feel like you are, that you're sick, you're tired, or you're fat, and you're in the right, you're in the place. They mistakenly put me in one time in a room when I used to do mammograms. I don't do them anymore. And with all these women that had breast cancer. And this one woman who was scared to death, sweating to death, I just held her hand. I said, and I said, there's always something that you can do. And I said, if you've been doing these every year, they've been damaging your breast tissue and radiating at the same time.
Exactly.
There's something in my head that doesn't fit with that. And, so, she had a positive result. And I said, here's my card. You can call me after here. She goes, well, don't you have breast cancer? I said, no. And she said, this is the breast cancer room. These are people who already have, because they want to target you with the same people.
Yeah.
And so, somebody said like, well, then what are you in here for? And we started talking about like, do you eat sugar? Do you eat, white things like potatoes and bread and rice? Do you eat those things on a regular basis? Do you know the source of those? And I go, because you've got to change what you eat for food, because when you eat food, it creates inflammation. So if it creates inflammation, could you eat fruit? If you're putting fruit in your shakes, I go, it's like pouring like kerosene on a fire.
Right. Cancer eats sugar.
Oh, it loves it. It's just like, it's like, wow, I love this person. I'm going to hang out here. And so, I've had situations in my life in like personal experiences that I challenged that system, and then I started doing thermograms and doing a set of mammograms. And because there's a pattern. There's a pattern for those. And it's just like, and if you know what the pattern is, when it changes is when you do a focal study. There's no reason to, take on, and it doesn't damage your tissue. You're just hanging out reading the magazine before you go in and like before they scan you. And, it's an easy element to, to work with. And maybe it's a little bit costly, but, and I mean, a little bit costly. I think in Massachusetts, I paid like $100 for the first one, or 250, something like that, but it was out of pocket. But, I'm thinking, how long does, if you eat well now, you're paying the bank now to eat well. So you're not paying the coffer later.
Exactly.
Because the average, like I think I read for the average person in diabetes, they spent over $20,000 extra out of pocket. And so it's just like, why it's just like, if you took better care of yourself, you could take that $20,000 and take the vacation of your dreams.
Mm-hmm.
You can put the down payment on a second house. There's other things that you can do with that money that when you invest in yourself, and when you do invest in yourself, you invest, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally.
Yes, it is an investment, like you said, of your mindset, your
Yeah.
time, and sometimes money, but you're going to pay more in the long run anyway with all these chronic diseases you're having to manage and all these medications and medical procedures and loss of, your lifestyle and work and all of those things. But what I
Well,
love about what you do and what you say in your book is, that you are encouraging your readers that not to accept that, to it's not your lot in life, or that, oh, you just have bad genes, that you
mhm.
have some control, and you teach people in your book on how to regain some of that control. So can you talk about who needs to read your book and what they're
Everybody.
going to get from it? I mean, I know it's everybody. But
Everybody, if any, well, when the books, I always, tell people it's a great not to buy the digital. I mean, invest in it and buy the paper. And the reason for it is because if it's on your shelf, you see it, and you can go to it in a nanosecond going like, I've had a couple months where I've kind of felt off, and you can take the questionnaire fresh, and you can write out your answers, and you can see where those numbers might be coming up. You can track yourself. You can track, like, this is my first one that I ever did. And I remember this is what I did in order to take care of that issue, that weak link, so, when I wrote the book, many times I asked my friend's son when I was stuck on a word that I thought was too medical, I go, tell me what you think this word means. And if he understood it, then I kept it. And if he said, I have no clue what you're talking about. So then we would look up a word that means the same thing. And we would use that instead, because what I did is I took I had, in my original questionnaire that I used in my office, handwritten kind of stuff, those questions that were on there, people sometimes left blank. And they get this because they said they didn't understand it. So when I took those questions and I got that idea of like, this is what I'm going to help people with, I'm going to help people understand where their weakest link is so that they can go do something about it. So the likelihood of them expressing or a bad gene pool, because genes only like rose bushes is kind of an odd analogy for some people perhaps, but a rose bush doesn't bloom all at the same time. You have to have certain temperatures, you have to have the right conditions. Diseases don't happen from your genes all at the same time, because if you did, you would have been dead a long time ago. And all those bad genes, those genome types and the epigenetics would have been, you would have you'd say, see you later. I'm on siesta permanently. But when you take a look at like how you can change your constitution, you can change your constitution by eating well. Food's medicine. And it's just picking the right kind of foods that go with the right kind of foods in order to start there, and then you do targeted supplementation above and beyond that. But for the person who's like, who that is for, it's for anybody who wants to know where their health is. They want to do something about it now and not wait till they're in crisis. A lot of times when you're in crisis, and that expresses itself, like, look at all those cytokine storms and COVID that came up.
Yeah.
It's no wonder that happened, because as I said, I think somewhere in that book, like, there are more people sick that don't know it.
Exactly.
And if you can take, when you take your health back in control, then you take your dreams back in control, because when you have your dreams and you have your health, you're unstoppable. You can have anything.
Right.
You just have to have the will and the persistence and the resourcefulness. You have to, like, what can I do to get that?
Yeah.
And so that you have tunnel vision for that.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people eat the same way that their parents ate. And they go, oh, it runs in the family. Well, of course it does, because you haven't changed anything, and it's like, stop eating that, or if you're going to eat that, then eat the organic version, and like, look where this, where's your food being sourced and what are those animals eating? I recently, about a month ago, had this woman said, oh, you're crazy. And that can't be. And because I said they feed Skittle to cows and they put it in food for cows. So if the cow's eating it, so are you.
Mm-hmm.
And I wondered at one point in time when I was taking the boards for Virginia years ago when I was living on Cape Cod. And I went down because I wanted, thinking that if I ever wanted to leave this frozen tundra up here, that I would go down, more into a more temperate climate. And so I went and took the boards. But the thing I noticed when I got farther south was that all these people were like really tall. I'm tall, I'm 6 feet, but I would see these kids, I'm going, do you drink milk? And I started asking them. So, they're drinking cows that were fed hormones, growth
Mm-hmm.
hormones. So, and they're drinking growth hormones. So you have a whole group of people who they're really tall, and they're a lot bigger than the generation before them. I thought,
Right.
and then people got aware of that and they, and now they have, their choices. They have more choices in having milk that doesn't have those things in it, or going back to drinking raw milk and that type of thing like that.
Yeah. So I think that the theme of this conversation is, you have control. It's not just bad genes or it runs in the family. It's not your lot in life. You don't have to accept that. You need to look outside the box and educate yourself, and don't just take the traditional healthcare system, the medical care system at their word. Get an advocate, read some books like yours, Why Are You Sick, Fat, and Tired? Start to educate yourself, maybe get an advocate, start seeing alternative health practitioners, pay for it, commit to it, because in the long run, it's going to cost you much more. And what is the cost of good health? I mean, what is the cost of a longer, more quality life? It's priceless, right? So I don't mind shelling out, $300 for 2 thermographies instead of going to get a mammogram, because I have a history of lumps in my breast, to not expose myself to radiation that's going to potentially, give me cancer. So I'd rather pay $300 and invest in a safe alternative that is just as effective, if not more effective, actually, the research shows, at targeting and determining whether or not you have some irregularities. But
well, a lot of people don't. My hope, one of my kind of missions that is giving people a venue to know where their health is at, and knowing that they have an opportunity to there's always something you can do to improve your health.
yes.
Even one of my very first clients, who had lung cancer in stage 4, she didn't live very long. But what the aha moment for her was, it's like everything they told her to do for eating wise was totally wrong, and actually made her worse than made her better. And if she, it's just like, when she found out, I go, how can somebody have signs and symptoms, for that, you don't pay attention to? I call them Grim Reaper syndrome. So there's things that happen to you, like floaters in your eye, like, like that bloated belly, like, you talked about constipation, diarrhea, you're not getting enough sleep, really having a crappy attitude, and and carrying that through, and then wondering why you hurt, you're in pain, and you can't seem to make it through the day without being depleted, and you want to take a nap at noontime, let alone at 5 o'clock when you get home, and you don't like your kids, you don't like your husband, and furthermore, you really don't like yourself. And so and then reposturing that, because there's always something you can do. You just start taking one small step, and then the next day you take the next step, and you keep on adding on to that. And then you can create, I always think miracles are great. Miracles are a lot easier when 2 people are working together as a team, moving forward in the same direction.
I love it. Yes. So those who are listening, please check out Dr. Ballone's book, Why Are You Sick, Fat, and Tired? So if you are all 3 of those things, or just 1 or 2, you need to get the book, and you need to take that quiz, and you just start with those small steps that Dr. Balone suggests in her book. And of course, check out her other services, and I'll include those links in the podcast notes. Thank you so much, Dr. Balone.
Thanks. This has been really great. What a great surprise.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Warrior Wellness Podcast. Hey, we're always looking for a few great guests. So if you're interested and you think you'd be a good guest for a podcast, go to fireteamwhiskey.com, click on the Warrior Wellness Podcast, and go ahead and apply to be a guest on our show. Also, please subscribe on whatever podcast platform you love to listen to and leave us a review while you're there. You can send it to info@fireteamwhiskey.com with your name and your mailing address. And we'd love to send you a little thank you gift just for taking the time for leaving us a review.